Women get addicted to men who act like they're nothing because indifference creates mystery, challenge, and desire. The chase triggers emotional highs, making every rare moment of attention feel like gold. When a man hides his worth, women project their own value, chasing what seems unattainable, yet irresistibly magnetic. When it comes to attraction, few things are as powerful as indifference. The men who seem unaffected, who move through life without constantly seeking validation or approval, often hold an almost magnetic pull over women. It's not about arrogance or cruelty. It's about a calm, unwavering self-possession that signals a man's sense of value is internal, not dependent on anyone else. Women, whether consciously or unconsciously, recognize this strength and are drawn to it. There's a psychological mechanism at play here. When someone acts indifferent, it triggers curiosity. Humans are naturally drawn to the unknown, the unexplored. A man who doesn't chase, who doesn't constantly reassure, who doesn't react to every word or emotion becomes a puzzle. The very act of trying to figure him out engages the mind and the heart. Women start to wonder, what is he thinking? What is he feeling? Why doesn't he seem to need me? That curiosity, that desire to understand creates a subtle but powerful addictive energy. Indifference also communicates a certain confidence that is incredibly attractive. When a man is unbothered, it shows he's comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't hinge his happiness on approval, and he doesn't measure his worth through external validation. This kind of emotional independence is rare, and rarity is inherently attractive. The more a man demonstrates that he has a life, that he has boundaries, that he is selective about his energy, the more value women assign to him, even if he is doing nothing in the conventional sense. There's also an underlying principle of scarcity at work. When attention is freely given, it loses significance. When a man is constantly available, constantly responsive, his presence is expected. But when he is selective, when his time, attention, and energy are not guaranteed, each interaction feels precious. Women begin to attach more significance to his words, his gestures, his presence, simply because it is not automatic. Another layer to this is the contrast it creates. Life is full of people who are eager, responsive, and available. A man who is indifferent stands out against this backdrop. He becomes memorable because he does not act like everyone else. Women notice the difference, and the mind naturally prioritizes novelty and challenge. Indifference also allows women to project their own feelings and fantasies onto him. Because he does not openly display his emotions, she fills in the blanks with imagination, desire, and hope. This projection intensifies attachment because it becomes a personal narrative, a story she is invested in writing. Finally, indifference subtly flips the power dynamic in a way that women find compelling. By not showing need or dependency, a man positions himself as someone whose validation must be earned rather than given freely. This dynamic, often misunderstood, can create deep emotional investment. Women find themselves chasing, wanting, and craving attention not out of obligation, but because the man has made himself a rare and enigmatic presence in their emotional world. The quiet strength of indifference, therefore, is not just absence. It is an art of presence that commands attention without demanding it. There is a deep psychological reason why women often become drawn to men who seem unattainable or indifferent. The chase feels inherently rewarding. From the very beginning, human beings are wired to seek challenges and derive satisfaction from overcoming obstacles. When a man acts like he is distant, uninterested, or hard to reach, it activates this instinct. The very act of pursuing someone who doesn't immediately offer affection or approval creates a sense of anticipation, a heightened emotional state that feels intoxicating. It's not just about winning someone over. It's about the thrill of the pursuit, the sense that effort and strategy can yield something valuable. Each small acknowledgement, each rare moment of attention from a man who seems unavailable is magnified in significance. What might be ordinary in another context feels extraordinary because it was earned rather than freely given. Women unconsciously recognize that emotional investment is tied to reward, and when a man acts elusive, their brain interprets his attention as a high-value reward. This sense of reward reinforces the emotional pull, creating a subtle addiction. Every text answered after a delay, every moment of engagement after a period of distance triggers a psychological high. It is a pattern similar to the one found in behavioral psychology, where intermittent reinforcement, the idea that rewards are unpredictable, creates stronger attachment than constant predictable validation. The more a man alternates between attention and absence, the more the pursuit intensifies. Another reason the chase feels rewarding is the illusion of control. When a woman pursues a man who is not immediately available, she feels her actions matter, that her efforts can influence his feelings or choices. This creates a sense of purpose and involvement in a narrative that feels personal and meaningful. The act of strategizing, adjusting, and engaging emotionally becomes an addictive cycle, where every minor success feels amplified. Beyond the psychological thrill, there is also the element of perceived value. Women naturally assign higher value to men who are not easily won because scarcity and challenge create an impression of worth. A man who acts indifferent signals that he is selective, that he cannot be claimed or controlled, and that his attention is something rare and precious. The pursuit, therefore, becomes a test, an unspoken game where winning him over feels like a triumph. It's not just the outcome that matters, but the process, the twists, the near misses, the moments of tension and relief. Over time, the chase becomes a form of emotional investment, where attachment grows as effort and desire intertwine. In many ways, this dynamic creates a powerful emotional loop. The harder the pursuit, the more rewarding the perceived connection, and the more addicted one becomes to the very man who remains just out of reach. The chase is seductive because it combines desire, challenge, anticipation, and validation into one potent emotional experience, leaving women captivated by the thrill of winning a man who refuses to be easily caught. One of the most subtle yet powerful reasons women get addicted to men who act like they're nothing is the way these men trigger self-worth projection. When a man behaves as if he doesn't need anyone, doesn't seek validation, and doesn't openly display his value, women instinctively begin to fill in the gaps. They project their own ideas of worth onto him, creating a version of him that exists more in their mind than in reality. This projection is not just imagination, it's emotional investment. Women start assigning meaning, significance, and even depth to his actions, interpreting indifference as hidden complexity, aloofness as confidence, and minimal attention as high value. Because he gives little, they are compelled to create much in their own minds. The man, in a sense, becomes a canvas for her desires, fantasies, and expectations. Every glance, every word, every subtle gesture is magnified in significance because it fits into the narrative she is crafting. Self-worth projection also feeds into the addictive cycle of attraction. The more a woman invests emotionally in defining his value, the stronger her attachment becomes. Even if he is indifferent, the meaning she assigns to him feels real, personal, and rewarding. It is a paradox. His apparent detachment makes him seem more significant precisely because she is doing the work of making him matter. This dynamic is reinforced by the psychological tendency to seek validation through challenge. Women often feel a sense of accomplishment when they perceive they have understood, or uncovered, a man who does not easily reveal himself. The act of projecting her own value onto him allows her to feel control, creativity, and emotional intimacy, even when the man himself is not actively giving it. Moreover, self-worth projection transforms ordinary behaviors into extraordinary ones. A casual smile, a fleeting moment of attention, or even a simple text becomes loaded with meaning. Each interaction is interpreted as evidence of depth, care, or interest, feeding the illusion that the man is more invested than he may actually be. This process can create a powerful emotional dependency. The more she projects, the more she becomes attached, and the more she seeks confirmation that her perception of him is accurate. This projection also explains why women often struggle to detach from men who treat them as secondary or even indifferent. The attachment is not just to the man himself, but to the imagined version she has created, the emotional narrative she has invested in, and the sense of self-worth that comes from believing she understands and values someone so elusive. In essence, the man's indifference acts as a mirror, reflecting her own worth, desire, and creativity back at her. She becomes addicted not only to him, but to the feelings of importance and significance that she experiences in the process of projecting onto him. The subtle power of self-worth projection is that it transforms absence into meaning, distance into intrigue, and indifference into a magnet for emotional investment. It is a dynamic that can make a woman feel connected, valued, and alive in ways that a man who openly displays his value often cannot. This is why women often find themselves drawn to and even addicted to men who act like they are nothing, because in projecting their own sense of worth onto him, they are creating a connection that feels profoundly personal and emotionally compelling. There is something undeniably magnetic about mystery, especially when it comes to attraction. Women are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully understand, to what is hidden just beneath the surface. When a man acts like he is nothing, when he doesn't reveal everything about himself at once, when he remains unpredictable or emotionally reserved, it creates an irresistible pull. Mystery breeds obsession because it engages the mind, ignites curiosity, and makes every interaction feel significant. The unknown is powerful. When a woman encounters a man who does not lay his feelings, intentions, or value bare, her imagination begins to fill in the blanks. She starts to wonder about his past, his thoughts, his motivations, and even his future intentions. This curiosity is amplified by the fact that he is not readily available. Humans have an innate desire to seek closure, to solve puzzles, and to understand that which is hidden. A man who acts indifferent or elusive becomes a psychological puzzle, one she feels compelled to solve. Each rare smile, each fleeting gesture, each moment of attention feels loaded with meaning because it is unpredictable. Mystery makes the ordinary extraordinary. A simple conversation can feel like a revelation, a chance encounter can feel like destiny, and a fleeting glance can feel like a signal of deeper interest. The mind naturally prioritizes what is scarce and uncertain, and this creates an emotional intensity that is difficult to resist. Mystery also encourages emotional investment. Because a man does not reveal himself easily, a woman begins to invest more time, energy, and thought into him. She imagines scenarios, recalls interactions repeatedly, and interprets small details as clues to his inner world. Every interaction becomes a puzzle piece, and the more she invests, the more attached she becomes. Obsession is not born from the man himself, but from the combination of his elusiveness and the emotional work she puts into understanding him. There is also a subtle power dynamic at play. When a man remains mysterious, he positions himself as someone whose attention must be earned, someone who is not automatically given. This creates a sense of challenge, and challenge is inherently compelling. Women find themselves drawn not only to his presence, but to the idea of being the one who uncovers what lies beneath. The tension between distance and desire, between knowing and not knowing, creates an emotional roller coaster that heightens attraction. Mystery allows her to project her desires, fantasies, and expectations onto him, making him larger than life in her mind. The more enigmatic he is, the more room there is for imagination, and the more she becomes emotionally invested in the version of him she has created. This is why women often find themselves addicted to men who act like they are nothing. The mystery surrounding them engages the mind, challenges the heart, and fuels an obsession that is as psychological as it is emotional. Each interaction, each small revelation, each unpredictable moment reinforces the allure. Mystery is not about secrecy for the sake of secrecy. It is about withholding enough to inspire curiosity, to create emotional tension, and to make connection feel like a reward rather than an expectation. In this way, the power of mystery transforms indifference into desire and distance into obsession, creating a magnetic pull that is almost impossible to resist. One of the most addictive aspects of being drawn to men who act like they're nothing is the emotional roller coaster they create. When a man is distant, unpredictable, or seemingly indifferent, he triggers a series of highs and lows in a woman's emotional state that can be almost intoxicating. It's not just about the moments of connection, it's about the contrast between presence and absence, attention and detachment, warmth and coolness. Each rare interaction feels amplified precisely because it is unpredictable. A simple message replied to after a delay, a fleeting glance, or a brief moment of attention can feel euphoric because it is not guaranteed. The brain responds to this unpredictability with heightened emotional arousal, similar to the way it reacts to suspense or surprise. The highs feel intense because they are framed against the lows, the moments when he seems distant, unbothered, or even unavailable. This push and pull dynamic creates a cycle that women often find addictive. Emotional investment grows not only from the positive interactions, but from the anticipation and longing created during periods of absence or indifference. The unpredictability keeps the mind and heart engaged. Women replay moments, analyze behaviors, and anticipate outcomes, all of which strengthen attachment. It's a feedback loop where emotional highs feel more rewarding because they follow emotional lows. This roller coaster also taps into a woman's desire for validation and significance. When a man who seems indifferent offers even a small sign of interest, it feels like a confirmation of worth. It validates her effort, attention, and investment in a way that predictable affection cannot. The rarity of these moments makes them feel extraordinary, as though she has achieved something unique. Over time, the emotional highs and lows create a dependency. Women begin to chase the feeling of connection more than the man himself. The attachment is fueled by the anticipation, the excitement, and the sense of reward that comes with each rare interaction. Even when the relationship or connection is not consistent, the highs are powerful enough to keep her invested. Another layer of this dynamic is the illusion of control. Women may feel that if they continue to invest emotionally, they can influence his behavior or gain more consistent attention. This sense of possibility keeps them engaged, even in the face of uncertainty. The roller coaster effect also creates a heightened sense of focus. Every word, every gesture, every interaction is analyzed and given significance far beyond its objective value. Moments of connection are treasured, while periods of distance are endured with the hope of a future high. In essence, the emotional roller coaster is not just a pattern of highs and lows. It is a carefully reinforced cycle of desire, anticipation, and validation. The unpredictability, the fleeting attention, and the intermittent connection create a potent combination that makes women addicted to men who act like they are nothing. The emotional intensity becomes irresistible, and over time, the highs and lows themselves become the source of attachment, keeping women engaged, invested, and continuously chasing the next peak of connection. One of the reasons women often become captivated by men who act like they're nothing is the contrast these men create with comfort. Life is filled with predictable interactions, steady routines, and people who are emotionally available in a constant, unremarkable way. While comfort has its place, it rarely sparks the intense desire and curiosity that comes from unpredictability. Men who are emotionally distant or seemingly indifferent stand in stark contrast to this familiarity. They disrupt the sense of predictability, creating an emotional tension that feels exciting and stimulating. This contrast makes their presence feel more significant and memorable. When a woman is used to emotional availability and easy attention, a man who does not offer that becomes an anomaly. His indifference or emotional restraint signals that he is different, rare, and not easily won. The human mind naturally gravitates toward what is uncommon and challenging, and the contrast between him and the predictable, comfortable men she encounters every day amplifies his perceived value. Comfort often breeds complacency. When affection, attention, or validation is given freely and consistently, it can be taken for granted. The emotional intensity is muted because the interactions are expected. In contrast, a man who appears indifferent creates scarcity, and scarcity inherently increases perceived value. Every interaction with him becomes significant because it is not guaranteed. The moments of connection are not routine. They are rare, charged, and meaningful precisely because they break the pattern of comfort. This dynamic also engages the imagination. In a world where predictable relationships offer little challenge, a man who acts like he is nothing invites a woman to interpret, analyze, and anticipate. She begins to fill in the gaps, projecting depth, intention, and significance onto him. The contrast between his emotional distance and the warmth or comfort she might otherwise expect creates a narrative in which he becomes the prize, the exception, the one worth chasing. Additionally, this contrast highlights the woman's own emotional investment. In relationships or interactions where comfort is constant, attachment is often passive. It requires little effort to maintain. But when a man is unpredictable or seemingly indifferent, attachment becomes active. She must pay attention, invest emotionally, and navigate the uncertainty. This active engagement strengthens her connection to him, making the emotional bond feel more intense and personal. The contrast between comfort and challenge also reinforces desire. Men who are readily available may be appreciated, but rarely provoke the same longing, anticipation, or obsessive thought patterns. A man who resists easy access, who does not cater to expectations, stands out because he forces a woman to engage, reflect, and invest. His indifference, in effect, elevates him above the mundane and ordinary, making him appear more valuable than those who are consistently present and accommodating. Over time, this pattern creates an emotional pull that can be difficult to resist. The stark difference between emotional comfort and the challenge of winning an indifferent man transforms ordinary attraction into something intense, compelling, and even addictive. Women are drawn not only to his mystery and independence, but also to the very tension his contrast creates, making every moment of connection feel rare, precious, and unforgettable. One of the most powerful forces driving women toward men who act like they're nothing is the challenge of ego. Women, like all humans, are naturally drawn to challenges, especially when the stakes feel personal and meaningful. When a man seems indifferent, distant, or emotionally unattainable, it activates a sense of challenge that taps directly into a woman's ego. The mind begins to see the situation as a puzzle to solve, a victory to achieve, or a prize to earn. The very act of trying to gain the attention, approval, or affection of a man who does not readily give it becomes a test of worthiness. Every interaction is evaluated not just for its surface meaning, but for what it represents in the larger narrative of winning him over. The challenge of ego is subtle but extremely compelling. A man who acts indifferent creates a dynamic in which a woman feels she must prove something, her value, her desirability, or her ability to elicit a response. The more he resists, the stronger this drive becomes. It is not just about attraction, it is about the satisfaction derived from overcoming difficulty and achieving acknowledgement from someone perceived as high value. This dynamic can feel like a game, one where the stakes are emotional and the rewards are intensely personal. The ego thrives on recognition, and when a man is elusive, recognition becomes scarce and therefore more meaningful. Every small sign of approval, every rare compliment, or even a fleeting moment of attention is magnified in significance. The challenge also activates a sense of competition, whether consciously or unconsciously. A woman may compare herself to others or feel compelled to demonstrate that she is the one capable of breaking through the emotional barrier he presents. This challenge reinforces attachment because it frames the connection as a personal achievement, making the man appear even more desirable. Another layer to this dynamic is the illusion of control. While the man appears indifferent, the woman feels that her effort, insight, or emotional investment might influence his behavior. This sense of potential influence reinforces the drive to pursue and engage. The ego interprets this pursuit as a measure of her capability, skill, and value, which creates a deep emotional loop. The more effort she puts in, the more her attachment grows, and the more rewarding it feels when she perceives small victories. Over time, the challenge of ego can make a woman addicted not merely to the man himself, but to the process of proving her worth. The emotional highs derived from perceived progress, like getting him to respond, showing him she matters, or earning rare attention, create a feedback loop that strengthens obsession. It is important to note that this dynamic is largely psychological. The attachment is fueled as much by her own perception and investment as by the man's actions. By remaining indifferent, a man unknowingly creates a landscape where the ego becomes engaged, desire is intensified, and attachment deepens. The challenge of ego transforms simple interaction into a game of emotional stakes, making the man appear more valuable, elusive, and irresistible. Women are drawn into this pattern because the pursuit validates their sense of self and engages them in a way that ordinary availability never could, creating a cycle of emotional investment that can be as compelling as it is addictive. One of the most compelling reasons women are drawn to men who act like they're nothing is the presence of hidden vulnerabilities. On the surface, a man may appear indifferent, detached, or unaffected by emotional circumstances, but beneath that calm exterior lies subtle glimpses of sensitivity and depth. These hidden vulnerabilities are rarely overt. They are revealed in fleeting moments, a softened tone, a rare confession, or a vulnerability shared in passing. Women, often instinctively, recognize these glimpses and are drawn to them because they promise depth and authenticity beneath the exterior. When a man appears unbothered, women are naturally curious about what lies beneath. They sense that there is more to him than meets the eye, and this sense of hidden complexity becomes a magnet for emotional investment. The allure of hidden vulnerabilities lies in their rarity. In a world where many people are emotionally expressive or predictable, the man who keeps his inner world guarded stands out. Every moment in which he allows a hint of vulnerability to show feels special, significant, and deeply personal. These glimpses are like secret windows into a world that is normally inaccessible, and the emotional impact is amplified precisely because they are rare. Women find themselves longing for more, replaying these moments in their minds, and investing emotionally in the hope of uncovering more of the man's inner self. Another reason hidden vulnerabilities are so compelling is that they create a sense of intimacy that feels earned rather than given. Unlike men who are openly expressive at all times, the man who reveals only fragments of his inner life requires patience, attention, and emotional engagement to understand. This process of slowly uncovering his vulnerabilities creates a sense of connection that is profoundly satisfying. It feels like a privilege to witness what others cannot, which makes the bond feel exclusive and meaningful. Hidden vulnerabilities also interact with the principle of contrast. When a man is generally distant or indifferent, the rare moments in which he shows softness or sensitivity are amplified. They stand out against the backdrop of emotional restraint, making them more powerful than they would be in someone who is openly expressive. This contrast creates a psychological tension that keeps women engaged, analyzing, and emotionally invested. The combination of mystery and vulnerability taps into a woman's natural desire to care, understand, and nurture. She begins to feel that she is the one capable of seeing beyond the exterior, of connecting with the real person beneath the facade. This perceived insight fosters attachment and even obsession because she feels uniquely positioned to witness and validate a part of him that no one else does. Over time, hidden vulnerabilities become the focal point of attraction. They transform indifference into intrigue and emotional distance into a compelling challenge. Women are drawn not only to the man himself, but to the glimpses of depth and humanity he allows them to witness. The more rare and subtle these vulnerabilities, the stronger the emotional pull, creating a dynamic where his guardedness and occasional openness work together to make him irresistible. In essence, hidden vulnerabilities are the quiet, powerful force that turns indifference into magnetism, fueling emotional investment and deepening attachment in ways that constant availability could never achieve. Throughout this exploration, it becomes clear why women are often drawn to men who act like they're nothing. It is not simply about indifference or emotional distance. It is about the intricate dance of curiosity, challenge, and emotional investment. Men who remain unattached, mysterious, and seemingly unaffected create a psychological and emotional landscape that ignites desire, fosters projection, and amplifies every rare moment of connection. The power of indifference, the thrill of the chase, the projection of self-worth, the allure of mystery, the highs and lows of the emotional roller coaster, the contrast with comfort, the engagement of ego, and the glimpses of hidden vulnerability all intertwine to create a magnetic pull that is difficult to resist. Women are drawn not only to the man himself, but to the feelings, challenges, and narratives he inspires. The sense of value, significance, and emotional fulfillment that comes from navigating the complex interplay between distance and intimacy. This dynamic is both subtle and profound, revealing that attraction is rarely just about the surface. It is about the mind being engaged, the heart being challenged, and the emotional self being invested in ways that are deeply satisfying and at times addictive. Understanding this helps to see the psychology behind attachment, desire, and obsession, showing that the allure of the man who acts like nothing is as much about the woman's inner world as it is about him. Ultimately, the speech highlights a universal truth. Human attraction thrives on challenge, curiosity, and emotional depth, and those who master the art of subtlety, restraint, and mystery wield a quiet yet irresistible power.